The Prince, Part 2. Jonathan heard the cry of alarm. One of the shepherds came running across the field. The donkeys are at the well. Something must have happened to his father. Jonathan took off running. Grandfather! Kish came out. Jonathan told him about the donkeys, and Kish shouted to the shepherd, Have you seen my son? No, my lord, I've seen no sign of him. Let me go. Jonathan feared they might have waited too long already. Let me go find my father. Kish shouted at several men came running. Jonathan refused to be set aside. I have to go. Abner will go. Let me go with him. Kish grabbed hold of Jonathan's shoulder. Go, but do not look for trouble. They traveled quickly, stopping to ask anyone if they'd seen Saul and Jethiel. They had been seen, but had gone on. Jonathan and Abner passed through the hill country of Ephraim, through the area around Shalishiah, and on into the district of Zuph, following word of them. Abner looked perplexed. The seer lives there. Here. Would his father come all this way to ask Samuel where the donkeys were? Eyes glowing, Abner entered the town of Naioth. We'll have news of Saul here, I'm certain of it. Yes, Saul and his servant had been there. The town was still talking about him. Samuel invited Saul to eat with him. Men were still talking about the feast. Samuel had saved the best portion of the lamb for him. The best portion? What did that mean? Why? We don't know, but Samuel seemed to be expecting him. Jonathan looked around. Where's my father now? Gone. Abner's voice was strained with excitement. What of Samuel? May we speak with him? Oh, he left as well. Did they leave together? Abner wanted to know. One elder shrugged while the other one pointed. No, Saul took the road to Bethel. Abner grasped Jonathan's arm. Let's go. We must hurry. What do you think happened? We'll find out when we find your father. Saul and Jethiel were not in Bethel. Apparently, Saul and his servant had entered the town with 3 others, were given bread, and had taken the road to Gibeah. Maybe he found out the donkeys came back, Jonathan said. Abner laughed strangely, or maybe something else. They came upon others who had seen Saul and were full of news about what happened. Your father joined the procession of prophets coming down from the high place in Gibeah. He prophesied with them. Your father, a prophet? Jonathan's father? How could that be? Others came near to hear what was being said. What happened to the son of Kish? He prophesied. What? Is Saul a prophet? Jonathan pressed in among them. Where's my father now? He's gone up to the high place. By the time they got there, Saul and Jethiel were gone. How long ago did they leave? Not long. Jonathan and Abner ran to catch up. Finally, Jonathan spotted a tall man and a smaller one walking beside him on a distant hill. Father! Jonathan shouted and increased his speed. Abner was on his heels. Saul turned and waited. He embraced Jonathan, pounding him on the back, and grinned. We were worried about you and came looking, Jonathan panted. What was that he smelled on his father? Something sweet. His father's hair was thick with oil. Saul greeted Abner. What happened to you? Abner demanded. Saul's expression closed. I've been looking for the donkeys. Abner stepped closer. You ate with Samuel. Saul lifted his shoulders and turned toward home. When we saw the donkeys were not to be found, we went to him. Jethiel had a little money we gave with him as a gift. And Samuel took it? Abner seemed surprised. No. Jethiel was quick to say, Tell me what happened. Saul glowered at Abner. Samuel told me to go ahead to the high place. Jonathan sensed a subtle change in his father's demeanor. Something momentous had happened, but he was unwilling to explain. Abner put his hand on Saul. What did Samuel say to you? Saul jerked free. He assured us the donkeys had been found. He stared hard at Abner. And they have, haven't they? Yes. Without another word, Saul headed toward Gibeah. Abner turned in frustration. Jethiel! He walked with the servant, speaking quietly. The man spread his hands and shrugged. Jonathan caught up to his father and walked with him. Saul gave a harsh laugh. Jethiel knows nothing. Is there something to know, father? Saul pressed his lips together. Jonathan's heart thumped. I smelled incense. Saul flashed him a look. Color surged into his face. Say nothing of it to anyone. Do you understand? Yes. Jonathan said nothing more, but he was afraid Kish's prayers might have been answered. Saul refused to talk about his meeting with Samuel. He returned to work and plowed. While Kish and the others speculated on what had happened, Jonathan labored with his father, waiting for him to say something about what had happened at Naioth. But his father said nothing. Working in silence, pensive and nervous, Jonathan refrained from pressing him like others had. But he spoke to his mother about it. Of course something happened, she whispered. I'm afraid to think what it might have been. Just stay close to your father. Do whatever he asks of you. When he's ready, he'll probably tell you first before the others. I think he'll need you in the days ahead. Did he say anything to you? No, but sometimes a man's silence speaks louder than his words. Kish came out to the fields. Let the servants do the rest of the plowing, my son. You're too important to do such work. Saul glowered. I'm a farmer, nothing more. Yes, we are farmers, but you may have been called to something greater than that. I cannot live your dreams, father. We are summoned to Mizpah. Summoned? Samuel has sent word that everyone is together at Mizpah. Saul turned ashen. Why? Why do you think? Kish was taunt with excitement. Samuel is going to tell us whom God has chosen to rule over Israel. Saul put his hand to the plow. Judah will rule. Judah? Kish gave a derisive laugh. There has not been a mighty man in Judah since Caleb and Othniel died. Judah? It's the prophecy. Saul didn't raise his head. Jacob said, and you think that gives Judah the right to rule over us? How many centuries ago was that? Then you go. You're the head of our clan. Maybe we'll all get lucky and you'll be king. I'm staying here. Kish's face reddened. We all go. Samuel has summoned all the people, all of us. Do you understand? He shook his head, and then Saul snapped the reins and set his strength to the plow. We leave tomorrow, Kish shouted after him. He looked at Jonathan. We leave at dawn. He strode away. Jonathan signaled a servant and left him in charge of his team of oxen. He went after his father. Saul paused at the end of the field and ran a shaking hand down over his face. Jonathan heard him mutter an angry prayer. Saul stood still, staring off into the distance. Jonathan stood near him, waiting, uncertain what to say. What's wrong? Saul gave a bitter laugh. Why should anything be wrong? Other than everyone is making plans for my life. He gave Jonathan a stricken look. A man should be able to say yes or no, shouldn't he? Jonathan didn't know what to say. Saul shook his head and looked back over the newly plowed field. He can't be right. Was he talking about Kish or someone else? Whatever happens, father, I'll stand with you. Saul let out his breath slowly. You won't have any choice. He handed Jonathan the reins and goad and walked slowly toward Gibeah, shoulders slumped. All Israel gathered at Mizpah. Jonathan had never seen so many people in his life. Thousands upon thousands of tents had been erected, and a multitude pressed close, murmuring like the rumble of a storm, ready to rain praises on the king God had chosen. When Samuel came out, not a man, woman, or child spoke. Here and there, a baby cried, but that was quickly soothed into silence. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, has declared. Samuel raised his arms. Jonathan's heart pounded. I brought you from Egypt and rescued you from the Egyptians and from all the nation that were oppressing you. But though I have rescued you from your misery and distress, you have rejected the Lord your God today and have said, no, we want a king instead. Now, therefore, present yourselves before the Lord by tribes and clans. Saul watched as the clans of each tribe passed by him, the Levites, the Reubenites, the Simeonites, the sons of Judah, and then the tribe of Dan and Naphtali. The brush and scrape of sandals and bare feet that was heard, for no one dared utter a word as the prophet watched and waited for the Lord to tell him who would be king. The Gadites, the Asherites, the son of Issachar, and Zebulun passed him. Then the half-tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim descended from Joseph. Only the tribe of Benjamin remained. Jonathan's stomach clenched tight. The closer they came to Samuel, the harder his heart pounded. His father wasn't beside him. He couldn't see his father anywhere. Where was he? He could feel the excitement in the air. Kish strode forward, head high, eyes bright, face flushed. Did he know Saul was missing? Benjamin, Saul called out, and Jonathan's heart leapt into his throat. A rush of quiet voices rippled like water cascading over a rock. Come forward, clan by clan, Samuel told them. The men of Benjamin obeyed. Kish looked around. He grasped Jonathan's arm. Where's your father? I don't know. Materi, Samuel called out. Kish looked around again, his eyes frantic. Kish! Kish! Samuel's voice rang out. The Lord has appointed Saul king over Israel. The tribe of Benjamin burst out in cheers and jumped up and down. Saul! Kish turned this way and that. Saul! The voices rose, some in triumph, some in question. Jonathan looked around, searching. Oh, father, where could he have gone? Kish's face darkened. He grabbed one of his sons and beckoned the others. Find your brother, quickly. Go, before these cheers turn to jeers. Go. Has the man come here yet? Someone called out. Samuel looked grim. Yes, he has hidden himself among the baggage. Jonathan felt the blood drain from his face and then flood back until he felt on fire with embarrassment. He ducked his head and wove through the men. Some began to shout, hiding? How can such a man save us? What sort of champion will he be? Jonathan ran toward the piles of baggage, as eager to find his father as he was to escape the disdain and contemptuous words. Hiding? Surely not. His father was no coward. Jonathan found his father huddled among the bundles and sacks, shoulders slumped, head in his hands. You're the king, father. The Lord has made you king. Saul groaned in misery. Tell Samuel it's all a mistake. God told Samuel it's you. God doesn't make mistakes. Jonathan hunkered down beside him. You must come. He fought tears, humiliation gathering. What if the others saw his father like this? He couldn't bear it. The Lord will help you. Surely the Lord will not abandon the one he's chosen, even if he abandons the rest of us. Saul raised his head. When he held out his hand, Jonathan grasped it and helped him to his feet. He could feel his father shudder when someone cried out, there he is. Men surged toward them. They surrounded Saul and Jonathan. Saul covered his fear and straightened. He was a head taller than every other man around him, handsome and strongly built. He stood like a king among them. Saul was swept along like a leaf on a river until he stood before Samuel. The prophet held out his hand. This is the man the Lord has chosen as your king. No one in all Israel is like him. Jonathan saw men of Judah sneer and whisper among themselves. Thankfully, the vast majority shouted, long live the king! Listen to the word of the Lord, Samuel called out to the mass. Saul stood beside the seer, facing the people. Samuel opened a scroll and read from it. Some stood still and listened. Many fidgeted. A few whispered among themselves. Samuel looked out over the people. The Lord said a day would come when we would ask for a king. He said to appoint a fellow Israelite, he may not be a foreigner. He faced Saul. The king must not build up a large stable of horses for himself or send his people to Egypt to buy horses, for the Lord has told you, you must never return to Egypt. The king must not take many wives for himself because they will turn his heart away from the Lord. And he must not accumulate large amounts of wealth in silver or gold for himself. Samuel took a smaller scroll and placed it upon the altar he had made of stones, and then handed Saul the Torah. Saul, son of Kish, son of Abiel, son of Zeor, son of Becheroth, son of Aphiah of Benjamin, you must copy for yourself this body of instruction on a scroll in the presence of the Levitical priests. You must always keep that copy with you and read it daily for as long as you live. That way, you will learn to fear the Lord your God, and by obeying all of the terms of these instructions and decrees. This regular reading will prevent you from becoming proud and acting as if you are above your fellow citizens. It will also prevent you from turning away from these commands in the smallest way, and it will ensure that you and your descendants will reign for many generations in Israel. Saul took the scroll and held it at his side like a sword. Samuel turned toward him toward the people. Saul's jaw locked as he looked out over thousands of staring at him. He looked but said nothing. Jonathan was filled with pride as he observed his father. No one could say that he coveted the power of kingship. Saul had all the eagerness of a man who just received a sentence of death. But no man among all Israel looked more like a king than Saul, son of Kish. Whatever it takes, Lord, help me to help my father, Jonathan prayed. Give me strength when he needs protection. Give me wisdom when he needs counsel. Put mighty men around him, warriors who fear you and will faithfully serve the king. Jonathan thought their lives would change, but as soon as his family reached Gibeah, his father turned to his field, leaving without orders those who returned with them and were eager to do the king's bidding. They built camps around town and waited. Are you going to copy the law, father? The fields must come first. Troubled, Jonathan went to his mother. Seer commanded it, mother. Surely Samuel will be displeased if father doesn't do it. Saul is the king of Israel now, Jonathan, and every king does what is pleasing in his own sight. If your father won't copy the law, there's nothing you can do about it. Do not waste time arguing with him. As strong as Kish is, has your grandfather ever won a battle with Saul? No. Your father had no ambitions to be king, but whether he likes it or not, he is. And whether you want to be or not, you are the prince, heir to the throne. His mother was shrewd. Everything she said meant something. What are you saying, mother? I would prefer you tell me outright. She spread her hands. Is it for a woman to tell a man what he should do? All I want to do is serve father. She folded her hands in her lap and smiled enigmatically. Then serve him. Ah, if the law must be written and his father had no time to do it, then he must. He went out to the field and asked permission to go to the school of prophets in Naioth. Saul nodded, finished the task as quickly as possible, and come home. He embraced Jonathan, kissed him, and let him go. By the time Jonathan returned to the house, his mother had already made preparations for the journey. And that's the end of chapter 1.